Say, Senator Melanie Roberts-Rajman, your final 3 minutes. I have to agree with you, but I need you to go back on the Parliament channel, play that back, and then analyze it carefully over the last 9.5 years, because exactly what you said is what the PNM did under your former Prime Minister. They shattered the GDP, they increased prices, they put in arbitrary austerity measures. They took away fuel subsidy. They increased inflation. Job losses were up at 60,000. This was what happened. So I must commend you for analyzing the past of your PNM government very well. So you will have a lot of time to sit there and think carefully about what you all will hope to do within the next 20 years. I want to say, Senator Lewis is here, so I will start with Senator Lewis. I changed around my batting order because Senator Lewis went for some water or something. So let me start with the Honorable Lewis. Senator Francis Lewis, with all due respect, Senator, government and the issues that we face now did not begin when you were fortunate to be appointed as a president's senator. This is about the third time I've heard you saying that you're a neophyte, and you begin here. This is the economy. We can't begin here. We must know what happened, what went before, what brought us here, how we are here now, and where we are going in the future. So with all due respect, I really would like to hear you, listen to you with some sort of action and knowledge. But if you are not aware of what took place, then I don't think that I am really going to learn much from when you contribute. So even though you may not have expected to be here, I would expect that you would go back, look at some debates, look at what took place, look at the policies of the former Minister of Finance, who's now downstairs, the member for Diego Martin Northeast, hear how he spoke, hear his policies, what he implemented, and then come to criticize me, and I might say, okay, let me listen. But if you can't do that, stick break in my ears. Secondly, with all due respect, sir, we are in a political system that is adversarial. See here? Government versus opposition. You are fortunate. You are selected. We are here because of politics. So don't come here and lecture me and the government about staying away from politics. We are here in charge, bringing this bill because of politics, because the people heard us, because we walk outside there, because we take cuss in the hot sun, because we ask people to vote for us, because we hear the plight of the people. You may have spoken to quite a few people, but I can guarantee you over the last 9.5 years, I've spoken to thousands and thousands more across this country because I am involved in politics. So it's rather unfortunate that you would take the opportunity to berate me and my colleagues over here for being involved in what we are involved in. So I would ask you to cease and desist. I would love to listen. You said, sir, Senator Lewis, that you cannot hunt with the hares and hunt with the hounds and run with the hounds. You cannot hunt with the hares and run with the hounds. It does not feel right. You spoke about conflict in some clauses here, and other members spoke about it, that the government may put some members on the BIR board and so on. But if you did not learn about the hunt and the hounds with the TTRA, where this PNM wanted to create a new revenue authority, created and concocted and orchestrated by a Minister of Finance who selects the entire board first. And when you see a PNM board, for example, you saw the NGC PNM board that invested $233 million in absolutely nothing in order to facilitate the PNM policy. And then they begged for an indemnity because they might get locked up. Do you recall that, or were you not paying attention? So you see, if the TTRA that they wanted to bring, that they keep coming here and saying that the TTRA would have brought some mysterious $5 billion just like that, their Minister of Finance was going to appoint a PNM board. The PNM board would have then hired the Director General. The Director General and 6 or 7 other offices would have been under the auspices and control of the PNM board. That is worse than anything that you have seen with the Hungs or the Hares today. So when you come here, you must understand what we saved this country from. We saved this country from the PNM, from the former Minister of Finance, who laughed at the population as he took away the subsidies, as they implemented austerity measures and talked about we didn't go IMF. You want to know why I get upset with Senator Dan Paul? Because he knows why he didn't go to the IMF. Because of KAMLA. Because when September 2015 came, there was 12.26 billion US in the reserves, 14 months import cover. There was 6.8 billion US in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. The Treasury was full of money. His Prime Minister and his Minister of Finance, who won once day, said there was only 3 days to run the country. And then next thing he was in a conversations with graphs showing huge cash balances at bank. So the only reason the PNM didn't have to go to the IMF was because Kamla Prasad Bisesa, the member for Separia, when she was Prime Minister, and her government managed the economy so well that they allowed this failing government to exist while shattering the economy, while losing over 60,000 jobs. Yet we had inflation. For 9.5 years, we went through something called stagflation. I wasn't going to talk today, but when I heard Senator the Honorable Amory Brown talk, that sort of fantasy, that concoction without any sort of reliable information, talking about growth in the last 3 years, and now we're in recession. If you shrink an economy by 19% and then it grows by 3%, the last time I checked, you're still 16% short. But they come here and pretend like all of us don't read, we don't research, or we do not have the ability to recall. And that's why it's important to know where we came from, so that I could listen. If you want us to listen, I want to listen. But I work very hard to come here to debate. And that's why, Honorable President, I must apologize to you. I accused the Senator Sanjeev Budo of lying. I used a strong word, and it's unparliamentary. I withdraw it and I say sorry. Because, Honorable President, the member said that over 100,000 jobs were lost. So I withdraw the strong word. What I would tell you is that he was untruthful. He was dishonest. He's a stranger to the truth. He was factually challenged. He was confused beyond redemption. He was suffering from a truth deficit. And he's a fabricator and a concoctor. 100,000 jobs, he does not even know. The working population of Trinidad and Tobago is 576,000. In 2024, late 2024, that's the numbers. 596,000. 574,000 were working. So the unemployed was 22,400. He is now saying in the last 7 months, 100,000 people unemployed. It's a total fabrication. And when you come to the Senate, if they don't want to research and do the work, then they should go in their bed, lie down and sleep and stay home. Just concocting figures. 100,000 people lost what jobs? Abject, total nonsense of the PNM. The same Senator Sanjeev Budo then went on. He's a lawyer. I come from a family of lawyers. I used to respect lawyers until I met PNM lawyers. I used to think that lawyers were some of the most brilliant human beings. Mother, father, older brother, Oxford, Harvard, younger brother, sister, son, all lawyers. But then I come and meet these PNM lawyers, and this one, Senator Sanjeev Budo, comes in here to say, well, the fines, he did research that demerit points will curtail behavior in a more meaningful manner than the fines. But nobody here moved the demerit points. So it's fine and demerit points, so, which means that they curtail the behavior twice then. But you come here to debate, and you don't even know the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, and you come here to swear on a Bible to do the service for the people. The PNM have no shame. That is why when I did not know the member, but when I heard he's some PNM member going up in Kumuto, Manzanilla, his first speech on the platform, because I listened to everybody, he said, these roads are bad, it's terrible. There is no water in this area and that area. The schools are dilapidated and they will not renovate. I said, but he ain't in government. That's why he lost. Because he let the people know, don't vote PNM because nothing is working. And now I understand that that was not a fluke, or that was not by mistake. He come back here now and talking the same abject, total nonsense. But one thing, you know, I talk to the people on the camera now. Anytime you're in trouble and you need good lawyers, clearly look for UNC lawyers, because the PNM lawyers they have here, if it's not Senator Sanjeev Boodoo, it's Senator Larry DeLuza, and then Senator Renta Building. So just look for UNC lawyers, and CPEP contractors also. Look for, where's Karim Marcel? He should look for UNC lawyers. CPEP contractors need UNC lawyers too, because they lost again, and now they have to pay. I hope them PNM lawyers who set up the clients will go and pay the fees for them. Well, Senator Sanjeev Boodoo said something there, and I nearly, Mr. President, I nearly fall off my chair. He said, and he was talking about the transfer of vehicles, and he said he had not seen in this country anybody get charged for not transferring a vehicle in 14 days and so on, and therefore we need more implementation of the law. I wonder if he ever looked to his left or his right. I wonder if he ever talked to a senatorial colleague who had a Porsche and it didn't transfer, and it went long and hard, and they couldn't find it, and another lawyer paid $600,000, but the check didn't cash. He didn't know about all of that. No. But somehow they didn't get charged. Now that is where we have to find out why they didn't get charged. Maybe it has to do with the fact that the PNM gets so involved in independent institutions that they handpick their own commissioner of police when the Police Service Commission chose somebody else. Maybe it is that. But you're talking about confidence in the economy. We have no confidence in our institutions because the PNM interferes with them all. So for this senator to talk about transfer of vehicle, knowing good well and well PCY 84 was not transferred and nothing happened. So where do we go from there? Senator Dan Paul, well boy, Senator Dan Paul said clause 15A is the most devastatingly dangerous clause he has ever seen in his decades as a public servant and so on, because of the conflict of interests and the political interference that may be involved with appointing private citizens to be in charge of tax information, secret information, and he saw this as a conflict. The problem with principle, Senator Dan Paul, is you can't apply it sparingly. You can't apply it when you feel to apply it. So conveniently. So you see that principle. But you don't see it when the Minister of Finance, the one you replace, the one who laughed at the citizens when he took away the subsidy and say we didn't riot. You didn't see any conflict in him appointing a board, a PNM board selected by him to select the Director General who in charge of the taxes and the Director General beholden to the PNM board. You didn't see the same principle that was being breached. It's just different. You see why I have to get a little bit annoyed? Because you cannot be selective like that.
And he's still sober.
Yeah, but that's very good. You're also one of your good colleagues, because we're talking conflict, we're talking apparent bias, we're talking actual bias, we're talking about transparency, accountability. So you didn't find it strange that one of your colleagues, probably who preceded you or worked side by side with you, Alison Lewis, a former permanent secretary, you didn't find it strange that when the People's Partnership government lost, she jumped out of the Ministry of Finance and went on a PNM board immediately to chair the Port Authority. You didn't find that was strange. And then she jumped on the NIQUAN as the vice chairman of NIQUAN, which was what? World GTL. And while we were in government, Alison Lewis was in charge of the F&GP, as you know, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance. And she was advising the then government, this is a bad debt, this is a bad investment, do not do anything, it cannot work, it will not work. And she's advising the cabinet that. And then she jumps out and jumps on a company and gets those assets from the PNM to do NIQUAN, changing World GTL into NIQUAN. You didn't find that bad. You didn't find that wrong. You didn't find that strange. And then the same PNM government gives World GTL assets that were purchased for approximately 100 million US for 25 million US. 10 million US cash and 35 million US. 10 million US cash and 25 million US preferential shares, which are now worth zero. So the whole population of Trinidad and Tobago, and they got ministerial gas from the PNM. All of this, and NIQUAN never produced one bit of diesel yet. But they got all of that. You didn't find that strange. You didn't use your principles of conflict and bias and apparent bias and insider knowledge. You didn't use that day. That was okay because it's PNM. See why I have to get upset and come here to debate? Furthermore, it got worse than that because you talk about banks and confidence in the banking system. But Alison Lewis then went on what? The board of Republic Bank, Mr. President. And do you know this company that couldn't make no diesel? It nearly blew up twice. A man unfortunately died while they can't make no product. They sell nothing. They didn't pay the workers in 11 months and they owe them 519,000 US. They owe in the gas company from NGC that created THPPL or whatever it is to sell them gas. They owe in 300 million US. You know what Republic Bank did? With a PNM board member and PNM board members and Alison Lewis on the board, they gave our NIQUAN 120 million US. 120 million US loan. You know what happened to that? Lost, gone, disappeared. Shareholders have to take the bonds. But Mr. Dan Paul didn't find anything wrong with that. This is why I cannot take the PNM seriously. And they said nothing when they were on the board. Anthony Wilson also. I even heard a PNM Senator Dan Paul talking about the Auditor General. Well, that one, I don't know. The same Auditor General that you and your government were fighting when the lady was just doing her job and you all went to the Privy Council to try and create a kangaroo court to investigate the Auditor General who was just saying, I need my documents, please. Could I have paperwork, please? I would like to form an opinion on these books. Can I have the documents? I'm not seeing it. That PNM government came in this parliament and the Senate and called. I didn't even know who the Auditor General was, to be honest. I didn't know if it was a man, woman, child. I didn't know. But PNM came with the Attorney General Lymore and the Minister of Finance and attacked the lady in the most vicious, malicious, wicked manner. Then they sent up pre-action protocol letters and they didn't want to pay for her lawyers. But they going to attack when the Minister of Finance was calling the Auditor General, and I have to hear a Permanent Secretary, a Minister of Finance who replaced that Minister of Finance, now talking about propriety and the process, and that as a Permanent Secretary, he doesn't even make contact with the BIR. But there was a Minister of Finance supposed to call an Auditor General on her cell phone to bring pressure to bear on an independent office. No, he was not supposed to. And that the piece of the case went to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council said that the former Minister of Finance should have been investigated also. But we come here to hear these PNM here talking like Pontius Pilate. Another thing, another conflict. Oh, the central bank governor is independent, and that's very true, supposed to be. The government is in charge of fiscal policy, and the central bank governor is in charge of the monetary policy, the supply of money and so on. But that PNM government fired our central bank governor, who later won in court, and they have to pay him $7.5 million for being fired. They replaced the central bank governor with the neighbor of the then prime minister who living next door to him in Inez Gate. And then all of a sudden, fiscal policy and monetary policy were moving in unison with PNM. Because, think back, the PNM came and said, $100 cut notes right after they lost our election in local government November 3rd, 2023. They get one curtail. They want to change the discussion and the discourse. They say, change your $100 in 3 weeks. It's not the remit of the cabinet or the government to change the money supply, is it? I didn't hear you. That is the responsibility of the central bank governor. But did the central bank governor make the decision? No, the PNM did. Did the central bank governor say, hey, PNM, that is my job. You all are out of place. Don't you dare talk about the money supply. That is my constitutional duty. Did the central bank governor say that? No, because he rhyming with the former prime minister in Inez Gate, with the former speaker of the house, and all of the members of the boards across the board, including the senior counsel, who ended up being a gas bunkerer. This PNM will never come back. You all could bring back Abdul Hamid from 15 years. You could go back and try to resuscitate Dr. Williams. The people fed up all and will never bring all you back. Senator Dan Paul said, debt is not a big thing. Debt is no problem. If your debt to GDP go up over 100, no big thing. Never mind, his PNM by 2022 had taken it close to 92%. It dipped back down, right, to 76. But it nearly crossed the 100. He said, no big thing, it's not that. It's the trajectory. Well, PNM was like a rocket ship. Them was better than Elon Musk. Them went in from September 2015. The debt, the external debt that Senator Dan Paul was talking about was 14 million. And by 2024, check it and see, it went up to 46 million. That is trajectory, boy. PNM know about trajectory. So this former minister of 1 month finance is telling us about trajectory when he mashed gas better than NGC. They also increased the overall debt from 76 billion in 2015 to 144 billion. That is PNM. That is our children have to pay back. And you come into play sanctimonious. Well, boy, I wasn't going to talk today, Mr. President. But when I heard Senator Amory Brown, I had to jot down some notes. Senator Amory Brown talk about the PNM. We had growth. I already said that if you shrink something and it come back a little bit, you don't call that growth. But the PNM had stagflation. I want to break that down for the people outside there listening. Stagflation is when there's high unemployment and high inflation. Now, why is that sort of very difficult to do? Because if you have high unemployment, it means they don't have plenty money to chase goods. So how come you're getting high inflation when you're not supposed to have so much money in the system? Because of the incompetence of the PNM. Not only was there high unemployment, but the ease of doing business had skyrocketed. The foreign exchange crisis, they couldn't get US dollars, so people had to buy on the black market. They took away the fuel subsidy, so transport costs went up. They did the safety and security. Everybody had to buy camera and security guards, so prices just kept going up through the roof. And we were under a state of stagflation for the last 7 years. Before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. And they come here and pretend like everything was rosy. They talk about we are crashing the economy. You cannot crash something that done crash. You ever crash twice? The PNM crashed the economy. Our lifeblood is oil and gas. Since 2017, NGC made a loss for the first time in our history since Ken Julian told us, burn the gas, sell the gas in the 70s, 1977. The first time we made a loss at NGC is PNM. After the negotiation of 2017, by 2018 and a half into 2019, profits under NGC, under Kamla Prasad Biswas and the People's Partnership was up at 2.1 billion US. They reversed that and we went to 310 million US in losses because Keith Christopher Rowley, the member for Dago Martin West, went to Houston with Stuart Richard Young, the member for Port Spain North. They left Franklin Can home, who was the Minister of Energy, and they went to conclude negotiations with the upstreamers, EOG and BPTT in 2017 in Houston, Texas. And immediately after that, in the next report, because EOG and BPTT are publicly traded companies, they have to report. They reported in their Trinidad and Tobago workings 69% increase in revenues. They were celebrating. Their executives were getting bonuses. The problem for Trinidad and Tobago is that oil and gas negotiation is a zero-sum game. So if they go up 69%, what happens to us? We go down 69%. That is PNM. And you all are talking about crashing the economy. What did that have? That had spin-off effects now, multiplier effects. So, first of all, their chairman, Jerry Brooks, resigned. But you know what happened with PNM? One thing good with PNM. When a man resigns or a lady resigns or a chairman, they just keep quiet. They don't say why. Now, PNM might say that's good politically, but for the country, that's not very good because you need information. Jerry Brooks resigned and never said why. But what we know is that the intelligent negotiators, those who were in the business, those hired as public servants on contract at NGC, were told to get out of the negotiation, and it was taken over by politicians, namely the Prime Minister and his mini-me, the super selected one. So former plus former is three former is former cube, was negotiating on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and we were left holding the short end of the stick that was stuck down in the mud in the labas after a fire. And then Point Lisa started to shut down, and I see Minister Abdul Hamid would be very interested in this because he's knowledgeable on the subject. He was part and parcel and taught by those who created it. Point Lisa's then moved from 74% down to 35% capacity. 11 companies shut and went down because the margins negotiated by Keith Christopher Rowley, the member for Dago Martin West, and the member for Port Spain North, St. Anne's East, St. Anne's West, Stuart Richard Young, did not allow companies to continue making their downstream products profitably. So they shuttered. How many jobs were lost there? 11 companies, let's average 100 high-paying jobs, 1,100 jobs, on top of shutting down the refinery, 5,364 permanent jobs, 6,000 daily paid jobs, plus contracting firms who provide supply to the refinery, plus the fence line communities, the nail tech, the restaurant, the bars, the hairdressers. How much money was lost and devastated from the Southland? But you talking about we crashing the economy, all you crash it and smash it. Senator Dan Paul said that we will have to borrow, and some of them are even saying we dip into the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. Well, if we dip, all you know about dipping, because the PNM in the last 3 years dipped 12 times, 2.1 billion US out of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. When we left it there in September 2015, it stood at 6.7, 6.8 billion US. We had grown that by over 3 billion US over our period in government. But between that time, Mr. President, the PNM from September 2015 till April 2025, you know what they did? They managed to keep it exactly the same. And then they boast because it had gone down below what it was before. And then the Minister of Finance, before he was switched by Senator Danpo, said, oh, we did well. We got a boost. We're back up to 6.7 billion. The problem is the opportunity cost. If you were running the economy properly, if you had negotiated the gas properly, if you were making deposits into the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, as Kamla Prasad Bissessa and Kevin Ramnarine, and then Larry Howard, the Minister of Finance, were making, one could have extrapolated that the Heritage and Stabilization Fund should have reached somewhere around 14.5 billion US, but they went down below 5. That is PNM mismanagement. That is PNM incompetence. But you know what? Only the people suffered, you know. The PNM didn't suffer because Senator Dan Paul told us, he tried to teach us about conflict of interest, about apparent bias, about impropriety. Yet he sits on a team that tells us that it's okay to sit in a cabinet, recuse yourself, walk outside, and let your friend and them rent your building. It's okay to go outside 100 times and take decisions to make your family richer while the people suffering. The PNM is a blight that will never return. We don't want no lecture from y'all. 2 ministers recuse themselves 200 times. You know it's 200 times. Mr. President, you only have a cabinet meeting once a week. The last time I checked in a year, you only have 52 weeks. Them recuse themselves 2 years a cabinet meeting to enrich themselves and the family. Well, if you had we have 2 years each, right? So 4 in total, correct, thank you, sir. You see, it's the number's so big I can't imagine. And they want to sit here and talk. Everywhere we look, they're talking about we crashed the economy and oh, we are borrowing to pay. The PNM did not pay their bills. The PNM owing TNTech owing NGC over $6.8 billion. They did not pay their bills for 9.5 years and now coming to tell us that we are borrowing to keep the economy going. Yes, we will do what we have to do to ensure Trinidad and Tobago stays afloat while we increase revenue streams. But y'all don't come here and play sanctimonious. They didn't pay the bills at NTS. The Ministry of Education owing TNTech 400 million. By housing over, and this Senator Cummings will know plenty about that. Contractors owed $1 billion. And Senator Cummings will know about 7 of the companies that he family around with have some good millions to collect. And y'all coming to talk about y'all are for the people. Rest me, in the words of the young people, rest me. Tobago. Mr. President, I wish I could have about 37 more minutes. Tobago. I'm a half Tobagonian, proud to be. But when I listen here, and this young Tobagonian senator also, the PNM collapsed Tobago's economy. You're talking about we crash anything? In 2017, the PNM collapsed the Tobago economy because they wanted to create an emergency to buy vessels without procurement. There were 2 vessels that were functioning brilliantly, purchased by the mentor of Senator Abdul Hamid, Patrick Mervyn, Augustus Manning, the Express and the Spirit. They were working flawlessly. They were working brilliantly. There was a Canadian company that was maintaining them and keeping them going. The PNM board took a decision to remove the Canadians. And one of the PNM board members, Hisarabai, was Magellan. and they got a contract to then maintain the 2 vessels, and they started to break down left, right, and center. They couldn't do the job. And this left Tobago stranded and cut off from the rest of the world. PNM then tried to find barge and all kind of things to put people goods on. A barge was taking 14 hours to reach across. When you had green banana, it reached across ripe. By Tobago, the economy of Tobago was shattered. On top of that, the tourists, in 2014, 96,000 foreigners landed in Tobago to spend money an average of 5 nights, 6 days. By 2017, PNM had decimated that from 96,000 down to 20,000. In the summer months, meaning July, August, 652,000 Trinbagonians went across to Tobago in 2014. By 2017, 2018, that number had dropped to 142,000. Crashed the economy, all you crash head on into a brick wall with steel reinforcement behind it. During that period, how many Tobagonian guest houses, businesses, craft stores, restaurants, small business crashed and collapsed and were closed down? I even talk about COVID yet. COVID was the greatest, most ineffective management of any crisis in the history of the Caribbean, and PNM tried to say they're #1 in the world because 2 fellas was drinking beers in Oxford. Hear what they say? Don't let the people come home. Nobody could come home. And they read that and say, wow, that's strong. Not knowing it was unconstitutional, they now lost nearly every case. Not knowing it was wicked, not knowing it was malicious, and not knowing it was ineffective, because 5,000 people died still with all the so-called COVID management. 5,000 citizens died, and PNM are boasting that they did COVID well. The borders were porous and open because not one case came through the airport. All the cases came across the Gulf of Paria from Venezuela. The only person who could have come and land during COVID was who? Delcy Rodriguez with 5 PDVSA officials, because the former Prime Minister selected by the former told us in the Senate here earlier this year that that was his modus operandi, that since 2016 he was working on Dragon. And during COVID, when the government changed and we were talking, Delcy Rodriguez came with PDVSA and wanted to talk about COVID. He forgot that 4 years before he had told us it was not about gas, it was about hamper for Venezuelan. Because the PNM tells so many untruths. You see how I improve, Mr. President? They tell so many untruths that they cannot keep the untruths together. And that's why the people have dealt with you all on April 28th. And furthermore, the way Dr. Amory Brown, Senator Amory Brown, talked about how great the PNM was. Well then, I expect the people of Tobago on January 12th will bring the PNM back if you all are correct and I am wrong. If you all are saying everything was so good and we are so bad, well, on January 12th, we should see a resurgence of that red. We shouldn't see the 15-0 that coming, because the 15-0 coming because the people know that PNM is just about their friends, family, and financiers. They didn't care about the people. They didn't care about the children. You talking about culture and the orange economy? Who cut pan in schools? Kamla Prasad Bisesa and Winston Gypsy Peters before he lost his mind and went PNM. Increased pan in schools across the board. There were over 150 secondary schools receiving funding for pan in schools. The former PNM Minister of Education, after the PNM got in by stealing an election with an extra hour by the EBC, who told them about it but didn't tell their competitors. That minister went to Panorama in 2017, school Panorama, and he only saw 23 bands. And he said, but what is But what is going on? Where are my children? Where are my PAN players? Not knowing that his government cut all the PAN funding. Under Kamala Prasad Bisesa, she raised the stipend from 500 to 1,000 per player. PNM cut that back. All you're coming to talk about, guys. So Calypso $1 million, they're singing bad about UNC and everything and partnership, but $1 million prize money. Kamala Prasad Bisesa loves culture more than any PNM and supports each and every bit of culture, every ethnicity, every race. That's why she is Prime Minister and remain. And that's why you all will remain right there. Thank you, Mr. President.